Hey guys, VaulSC here. We're going to take a look at a game of infiNity between the iKari company mercenaries and Ariadna. So it's a matchup I haven't really played before, but it is a scenario I have played before. That's Frostbyte. So even though we're going to be playing on a bit of a deserty, sort of hot-themed map, you've just got to try and imagine that it's really, really cold and that the models die at the end of the game if they're not standing in an area of the table where there is a heating unit. I find that after playing this scenario a few times, it's not really as much about the cold as it is about your data trackers, because any tags and heavy infantry don't really care about the cold. The data tracker doesn't care about the cold, and if you've got deployment zones like here, and there's an exclusion zone out here, so this area here, if you're going second and you've kept your data tracker alive, maybe on a building like this, and you just move it over into the exclusion zone, if your opponent hasn't done that, or if their data tracker's dead, you'll just win. So it's a bit more about getting that data tracker in there than anything else. However, there are going to be some games where both players assassinate each other's data trackers over the course of the game, and it's going to come down to army kills, and that's going to be more of a matter of keeping more of your army in the zones and wiping out the enemy units, which would otherwise have found it easier to get to safety. So what kind of lists are we going to be looking at today? So I'll just take you through the iKari company one, which I've recreated here. So my list is featuring the same old link team that I almost always use: Tanko missile launcher, Brawler lieutenant with a rifle, 3 Kaisotsus including a hacker and forward observer. So that's just my favorite iKari setup. I'm playing the double Wuming plus Brawler MSV2 sniper in the Haris team, which is something I've only run once before. That game was really unlucky. It was an annihilation game against, I think, regular Yuching a while back last year. But the game didn't go badly because they're a bad link team. It's just I had some bad luck, so I'm retrying it. Got the Pathfinder of Fugazi, really good choices. The 4 Yuan Yuans is making a return appearance to put on some pressure, even though I've got no Eva or repeater in the army. So that'll actually be quite handy against Ariadna, because Ariadna isn't likely to take a hacker with hack transport. So there might be an opportunity there. Then, of course, the usual suspects: Ninja, Killer Hacker, Doctor, Krakot, and just another 10-point Kaisotsu to round out the regular orders. So a little bit weird, lopsided version of what I normally run, but the Yuan Yuans are just so much fun. And of course being buffed with the new changes to the season, right? So, not needing a template to drop onto, they can just drop onto wherever they fit. So my opponent's list, I only remember most of the models, not all of them, so I've just recreated it up to 278 points. Some of these profiles may not be the ones that he took, and obviously there's going to be an extra couple of units in there. And I can't remember which groups he had what stuff in, but I do remember there being Uxia McNeil, boarding shotgun superior infiltration. He definitely had a T2 rifle Wolver. I think there was a doctor in there. There's a dynamo with rifle, I'm pretty sure. Spetsnaz HMG, always going to be in the Ariadna vanilla lists. A couple of line Kazakhs, 1 lieutenant included. Inferior infiltration grunt, a couple of chasseur mine layers, really good value for 20 points. Foxtrot, the Antipodes, which I haven't really faced very much of before. Ermedino, really cool specialist guy, engineer. A couple of volunteers, since they're really cheap cheerleaders, and of course a war corps at the back. So we'll get into it then. What am I looking for? Nope, this will do. Okay, so I am going first for this particular game. And that's because my opponent wins the dice roll, decides to take the table edge that he wants, and I'm just thinking, against Ariadna, even though taking second turn is much better, Ariadna's just one of those factions that does so well going first, because they've got some infiltrators, they've got a lot of drop troopers, they've got Antipodes and Cameronians and you name it, so along with all the smoke and so forth, not to mention the Spetsnaz shooting your ARO pieces, I kind of wanted to get a hold on to the game by going first, dropping my Yuan Yuans in, trying to kill anything that might threaten the Tanko missile launcher, and then just dominate the long ranges of the table after that. So maybe not the best strategy, but decided I'd be more comfortable doing that for this particular game. So here's the link team: Tanko plus Doctor, represented by a Kempaitai, forward observer Kaisotsu here. That's the Brawler lieutenant. In fact, I'm gonna there's a hacker and the other one down here. Just probably going to change colors though. Yeah, let's grab a different pen. Go with a red. Yep, so link team there, obviously. This is the right-hand sort of side corner of my table. HVT hanging further out. There's going to be a Ninja and hidden deployment around here, so it can move up to that console, so we can turn on the heating units, which are located back here and somewhere over here. Little flashbulb spot at the back. There's a random Kaisotsu over here. Krakot in the distance, but just move to the next image so I can keep going through it. Okay, so here's the sensor bot, random Kaisotsu cheerleader. Krakot is going to be the data tracker for this game. It's just everybody else is in link teams and wants to fight, and this guy's usually quite mobile. Does actually manage to roll up, I think, climbing plus, so that's really handy for being a data tracker going to the middle of the table. And then, of course, the Wooming link team, so you've got the multi-sniper brawler, the Hariska with the submachine gun, and the HMG at the back over here. There's a closer look at them. So HMG at the front, Haris in the middle, and MSV2 sniper to the right there. My classified as HVT inoculation, not a particularly easy one to get, but again, luckily the game is not likely to be decided by the classifieds. So my opponent in his turn rolls up a superior infiltration to put Uxie McNeil right next to my link team, even though he's not going first. So I had a bit of a think about why he would do this. I mean, he's a reasonably experienced player, and I wouldn't really expect him to do anything completely stupid. But just looking at her profile again, she does have grenades, I think. Specialist superior infiltration. Oh, she's got smoke grenades. The other version's got regular grenades. Okay, so maybe he'd forgotten about that, and maybe I'd forgotten about that too. But my worry was that the ARO would be a grenade, which could be shot at this model here, and the template would clip my lieutenant. And if he's shooting at me, the lieutenant's not going to have a chance to dodge, and the blast from the grenade might kill him. Now, there's no worry of that happening because he doesn't actually have grenades, but I don't know if either of us knew that at the time, so this went a little bit awkwardly later. Hidden deployment verification photo of my ninja location. Just about to head out to this objective here where I can turn on one of the heating units. Alright, and so my opponent's deployment, he's got a Galwegian at the bottom left at the back, his lieutenant next to this blue cube, Spetsnaz H&G waiting up behind the wall, ready to fire at the Kaisotsu link team position if it wants to later in the game. To the right of that, we have what is probably a mine, one of the volunteers, I believe, or the Kazakh. I can't tell which are Kazakhs or which are volunteers, but they're similar. Ermendino at the back here. I believe there's a chasseur and a mine hanging out around there. This is the Dynamo with the rifle, another sort of mine specialist, sort of whatever it is special. There's so many camera markers since it's Ariadna. And on his right-hand side flank, with the right-hand corner being down back here, we've got the Grunt. I think this Grunt failed its inferior infiltration, or maybe didn't have it in the first place. I can't quite remember. Got a camo marker right there, a couple more cheerleaders here and here. I believe this guy here is the Doctor. So that's roughly look at the deployment zone, although as you can tell my my memory's a bit hazy. Don't forget two camo markers here, either which can be a mine. Well, this one's prone, so it can't be a mine, but this one likely to be a mine as the enemy moves into the Ariadna deployment zone. So there you go, that's a much better look at what it looks like. These three camera markers here are actually the Antipodes, and they are linked up to the Antipode controller, who is, I believe, back behind the wall. In fact, no, she's deployed somewhere else in the deployment zone completely, I think. So what's happening is it's my first turn, and I'm using these Guangxi to represent Yuan Yuans, because I've only got one legit Yuan Yuan model, and I want to put 4 on the table. So the really amazing thing about this is that this Yuan Yuan here is able to drop down right next to this model, who I suspect is the lieutenant, right? And because his line of facing is like this, all he can do is change facing dodge, and he can't hack transport. And because this cube here blocks line of sight to his deployment, and he's up on a 2nd level, nobody else can actually target him with an ARO. There is an Antipode there which can respond with an engage, but either he failed the engage roll or just opted not to do it, because the Yuan Yuan actually lands here successfully, which is a really insane spot for him to be in, because based on my knowledge of Ariadna and the way that he's deployed his army, I was predicting there to be a Spetsnaz in the corner over there, really valuable model. And if the Yuan Yuan successfully lands there, he can actually move into close combat with the Volunteer and fire his chain rifle over at the Spetsnaz's direction without the Spetsnaz even getting line of sight, because I can use the Volunteer to block. I mean, if I go prone and I crawl over this side, all three models in the line, you know, the Spetsnaz, the Volunteer, and the Yuan Yuan are all prone, so the Spetsnaz won't be able to see. So quite an important maneuver, and yes, I did pass the airborne deployment physical check, so that is actually where it is. To make matters worse, I've actually got another one of them down here, and he's going to be able to come around and actually launch his chain rifle at all three of these guys, so the Galwegian and the two Antipodes and everything. So really good rolls with them so far. This guy over here is just going to land next to my HVT, because I think either he scattered off the table or I just deliberately chose to bring him on there. He luckily rolled up a Panzerfaust, so the best weapon possible for this kind of trooper if you land way out in the open on the side of the board. And then on this other side of the table next to the Worming Link team, there's this other guy here. So I've made some notes. So the two guys who are in the enemy deployment zone at the top, the guy on the roof has a monofilament weapon, and the guy on the ground has an EM close combat weapon. The two that are deployed back at home, the one next to the HVT has the Panzerfaust, and the one next to the Worming Link team has +1 armor. So that's what their booty level 1 tables are rolled up as. So, again, coming back to Uxie McNeil, I really thought that she'd throw a grenade. But after thinking about it a while, I was happy for him to do that, because that would allow me to destroy her with the Link Team Kaisatsu. And then later on in my turn, I can send the Doctor down to revive the Brawler if it dies. And that way I don't end the turn having the Lieutenant dead. So what he does is he decides to boarding shotgun me, which probably means that either he had realized he didn't have the grenades, or realized the same thing I did, and went for a boarding shotgun defense, probably regretting him, you know, the fact that he put her there. But the Kaisatsu does gun her down successfully, since she's out in the open, and you know he's got the Link Team, 4 dice, and blah 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 blah. So that's Uxie dead already. Alright, so back to the fun action. Exactly what I described earlier has happened. The Guangxi, sorry, not the Guangxi, the Yuan Yuan. I'm going to be saying Guangxi quite a lot in this. The Yuan Yuan who starts here goes prone at the start of the short skill, moves its base around here, so it's now in contact with this Volunteer. Note that he's got the old school Antipodes, the really old classic sculpts, which look like these little dogs, which are quite cute. I really love the new sculpts, but you know, you can't beat the classics. So he tries to engage with the Antipode with its massive physical and fails unbelievably. The Spetsnaz has to dodge really, because there is a template from a chain rifle basically going directly through this line here to touch him, and he can't do anything else. The Volunteer also, I believe, attempts to dodge, or maybe attacks me in close combat, but incredibly, the Volunteer dies, the Guangxi doesn't die, the Antipodes doesn't actually manage to get the dodge off, but the Spetsnaz does manage to survive. On ground level, the other Yuan Yuan moves around and actually trades chain rifle blasts with the Galwegian, and again, incredibly, the Yuan Yuan survives the chain rifle coming back at him, does put the Galwegian into dogged, failing the armor save, so he will be removed at the end of the turn, and these two camera markers are now revealed, which is kind of crazy. So that's a bit of a shocker. Yeah, I mean, just everything that could possibly go right with these Yuan Yuans is going right, and it's one of those rare games where that happens, because usually so much stuff goes wrong with them. So having killed this Volunteer and managing to move out of the way, the Antipode's still failing the dodge, incredibly, and now is out of range for an engage, and the Spetsnaz has to either shoot back or dodge a chain rifle, so he's going with the dodges, and what happens is that the Guangxi actually, so the Yuan Yuan, again, there I go again, the Yuan Yuan, sorry, does get engaged, so I move the dog over here in front of me, and the Spetsnaz is still just cracking and hanging around. Now, the funny part of that is that this guy rolled up a monofilament weapon, and although I'm only CC 19 versus his CC 20, I think it is, in terms of risk versus reward, it's worth actually hitting in close combat, because if I win, I can go after the Spetsnaz, and if he wins, well, he just gets a Yuan Yuan, right? So with more orders in that group, I decided to go for the swing, did win it, and he did fail his armor save, and he loses the dog. So now the Yuan Yuan's moving towards the Spetsnaz. If the Spetsnaz shoots, he gets hit by a chain rifle, and if he dodges, he's getting pistoled with 2 shots. And that's how bad things have gotten. Even though you're Bliss skill 9, the Yuan Yuan's still, you know, a problem. So we eventually get to the point where the guy gets into close combat with him. The Yuan Yuan's in close combat with the Spetsnaz. Spetsnaz's very good in close combat, but the thing is, as soon as he makes a swing at me, he's taking a chain rifle. And if he stays locked in close combat in his turn, it's going to make it harder for him to move up and shoot and everything. But, you know, the unthinkable happens, and the Yuan Yuan actually does destroy the Spetsnaz with a chain rifle in this last little move here. So, just mind blown. Mind absolutely blown. You got one Yuan Yuan who lands on the rooftop, kills an Antipode, kills a volunteer, which is likely to be the lieutenant, or a line Kazakh, I should say, and a Spetsnaz. And this is a model that's worth like 8 points, which is absolutely absurd. And his buddy down on ground level is actually still kicking. He's still alive. He's already killed a Galwegian. So never in my wildest dreams would I ever have thought that 2 Yuan Yuans could actually do this well in a game of infinity, but it has happened. So, spinning an order on the Kaisotsu Link team, Link leader going over to the Tanko, just moving over to this spot here because he can cover more of the board and maintain cover. And there's no real AROs poking out to contest him. So now he's got a controlling field of view, and there's no Spetsnaz to contest him. Alright, so on this side, we're now going to go to Group 1's orders and start moving out around this way with the Haris Link team. And part of this is to sort of set up a spot where I might be able to kill his data tracker, or at least kill a lot of cheerleaders. So here they come. I've moved out with my other Yuan Yuan over here with his irregular order, just to try and fire a Panzerfaust blast over to this Dynamo, but doesn't manage to take him out. In fact, the Dynamo unleashes his DEP and destroys the Yuan Yuan, so good job. Okay. One other thing that I decided to do with Group 2 is actually move in with the bot and put it in suppression fire in the middle of the table as well. So there was that also. So just coming back over to this team here, the Wu Ming. It wasn't in this turn that I decided to move out. I believe that most of what was happening in Group 1 was the Yuan Yuan that landed on the building, I think was Group 1. And that was the Yuan Yuan using most of the regular orders. So that worked out quite nicely. Because then we've got, I believe, the Ariadna turn where they're moving impetuous troopers up, Ermendino, Galwegian, throwing smoke grenades. So here we go, just blocking off some line of sight. We've also got guys heading towards the Yuan Yuan on the building, who's able to defend himself with a smoke grenade. So even in the Ariadna turn, he's not going to be dying. So these two guys are just moving up the field. This is on his right-hand flank. There's a Wu Ming Haris team in that direction, and the Kaisotsus are in this direction here, but nobody can see them. And the Ermendino may want to actually press this button at some point to start warming up the table with some heating units. He also has a Antipode control device back over here. I think there's some weird rule that they go into retreat or something when one of them is dead, but I've never really sort of looked into that rule very carefully. Note that he's got his data tracker hanging out over here. This is the Wolver. Okay, Dynamo out of ammunition because he's got his DEP, just moving carefully around the corner, setting up a bit of a different lane. And he's in lost a lieutenant, mind you, so this turn's not going, particularly well. He did decide, after I mentioned it, he did decide to move his Wolver out around here because he's got a free data tracker order plus his own irregular order. So he was able to move out there and over to cover this building. And me telling him that he probably should do that possibly cost me a lot of hassle in this game, or caused me a lot of trouble in this game, because I did have a plan to move my MSV2 sniper all the way around from one flank to another, taking probably most of the orders and then just sniping him through this little angle here. And when you get long range, MSV2 sniper in a link team like that against one Wolver, usually the Wolver is going to die. But, no, he moved out there. Okay, so back to iKari. It's already iKari turn 2 because that loss of Lieutenant was so brutal. So, the other Yuan Yuan moving up on the left-hand side of the table, throwing a smoke grenade, and this is to move out then with the MSV2 sniper, who can use that smoke to his advantage. Elsewhere, we've got an impetuous Yuan Yuan moving into these antipodes, but they can't really attack or anything because they're fleeing or something like that. And the guy on the roof still is alive, so he just moves next to the wall, throws a smoke grenade, and, you know, nobody cares. Okay, so what we can do now is the Link team moves out. So we've got the HMG up the front, the Haris back here, and the MSV2 sniper coming up around the rear. He can actually draw a bead to, say, that Galwegian and some of the other line troopers at the back, and just move through, chopping them down one by one. Only problem was that there was some sort of Ermendino here. So what we're checking for is the silhouette, just to see if there is line of sight between somebody going up the stairs and his model. So I had a plan to move my entire Haris team all the way up here, right? And I couldn't really do that if there's going to be a chain rifle hitting them as they do so. So I had to come up with some other plan, and that other plan was to move in with the Yuan Yuan first and maybe throw some more smoke grenades. So we had a look at that. The MSV2 sniper still taking quite a while to get in there and getting the shots off, but eventually it came down to a point where I kind of had to move up around the corner with one of my Wu Ming to go after him and I think shoot him. No, I got to this point specifically, and then the other Yuan Yuan comes through, throws a smoke grenade down, so then they can actually move up. So I did achieve that. It just took a little while. So now they can all move up the stairs. The MSV2 sniper guy can actually be the link leader as they're doing so, and just like move, shoot, move, shoot, move, shoot, and get some shots off at some of the back row. So that's why this is taking so long. Very blurry photo, but I will use it anyway, just to point out that the HMG is going up the stairs, the sniper's going up the stairs, but the chain rifle submachine gun's going over to here, because if he gets to this point, I mean, this is a 10 order you know, run, by the way. Once he gets there, he should be able to lean out of the side and kill the enemy data tracker. And killing that data tracker is so important since I don't have last turn, because if he waits till the end of the game and moves the Wolver into the middle of the table, I probably lose. So that's what's going on. So here he comes. We're checking line of sight. So at this point, he moves around, does achieve line of sight to the Wolver and also a couple of other troopers, and just dangles his submachine gun around the corner and starts spraying it. And what ensues is probably one of the worst rounds of luck that I've seen in a while, where I think I burned through about 4 different orders, and every single time I'm just blasting this Wolver, and the Wolver's just dodging and using climbing plus to go up the wall. I don't know if it's possible to do that with a dodge, but that's how we were playing it. And although I was getting really unlucky with the shots, ironically, I was getting lucky with my armor saves, so there was a couple of free rifle shots coming my way, sometimes missing, sometimes, you know, bouncing off the armor of the Wu Ming, but the Wolver just not dying, which was absolutely incredible. So it gets to a point here where I'm having to lean out, even taking the flamethrower hit from the grunt. And basically when I got to the end of the turn, we're set up in a spot where I have to move back. I believe I got wounded at one point. I've inflicted 1 wound on the Wolver down at the ground level, and everybody else just hanging out. And the problem is the Wolver's got climbing plus, so because dice just completely failed at me over 3 to 4 attempts of submachine gunning him at close range in a link team with AP rounds and all that sort of stuff, it just wasn't happening. So now the Wolver can just come up using climbing plus and actually kill my whole Haris team, which is disastrous. Disastrous. So here's how it goes. Group 2, mind you, Ninja coming out of hidden deployment and pressing the button, and that is allowing me to heat up the deployment zone where most of my troops are. Okay, so Ariadna turn 2, there is an Ermendino who is actually live, coming up towards here with his impetuous, and he's going to be hitting that button shortly. And then here it comes. So the Wolver, amazingly, and note this is, I think, the old school sculpt Wolver, is able to abuse the zone of control change-facing shenanigans, where you basically move to a point where you're within line of sight, you're within zone of control, but not line of sight of your enemy. Your enemy must choose to either reset or change facing or do no arrow at all, and then you come around the corner to close combat without being shot, and that's exactly what the Wolver's doing here. He's got Natural Born Warrior, and he is able to dispatch the Wu Ming very easily. So it puts me down unconscious, and there's 2 more to go up here. Then what he does is he comes over to here to have a bit of a fight with the brawler. Now this is after he attempts to go at me with some grenades, spec firing them. But with a limited number of orders, spec fire is not always that great, and he does miss his spec fire shots. Then he decides to do it the straightforward way and brings his machine gun around the corner and blasts me dead with a T2 rifle. Elsewhere, there's an Ermendino collecting the credit for the button pressing over here before he goes up against this Yuan Yuan. And then we also have a camo marker moving out, I believe a foxtrot. It's moving out from this direction, and my link team's over here, so he's got to be careful, and I think he's going to come around this way. So let's just see where the photos take us. Yep, so foxtrot comes over around through to the middle, just avoiding what line of sight it can, and then laying some mines coming up the stairs, just creating a bit of a presence in the midfield. And laying a mine here. He's got 2 different groups, and I believe this was a model in the other group from the Wolver. So the other group 2 orders are being spent on this guy, and the Wolver's getting the other ones, right? Okay. So I think what happens is that the Wolver ends the turn in a spot where he's left the Wooming HMG alive, interestingly enough, because he ran out of orders. And we've got a whole bunch of mines up in the midfield with this foxtrot. So, in my turn 3, again the Yuan Yuans are going ham, they're going crazy, and nobody's really there to contest them. There's a couple of stray rifle arrows maybe, but I've got the smoke dodge to deal with that, and these Antipodes aren't really providing much of a fight either, because they are, you know, they've lost a member. So in we go. The Yuan Yuan moves into close combat with the Ermendino, and I believe gets killed by the Ermendino. I can't quite remember. So here it comes. Here's the main one. Yes, in fact, you can see the Ermendino down the bottom victoriously. So Wooming now stepping up to the plate. He has to kill this this Wolver, otherwise I lose the game. So he's going to move up to the top of the ladder, like so. Now, I can't be bothered looking up the statistics during a game, but we're going to do it now. We're going to do it right now. So, what is the best way? Dice calculator. What is the best way to do this? If we go Yuching and we pick out the Wooming, let's say we get an HMG at short range with cover, and then we take a Ariadna model with, it's going to be a Wolver, sorry. Do they count as line infantry? Like line infantry with two wolves? Two wounds, not 2 wolves. There it is there. So he's got a T2 rifle. And if he's shooting at point blank range, that's on 0s. And we're going to say that he's got cover. Even though, no, he actually doesn't have cover. Even if he does have cover, I'm just quite curious to see what happens if you go HMG. So there's a 43% chance of doing 1 wound on him. He has already taken a wound, so that would be enough. 10% for the Wolver to grab him. If we change that to a pistol low at that range band, how does that change the situation? Goes down to 30% low. Am I doing things right? Range, yeah, it's +3. So I think in that specific scenario, having more shots with the HMG is possibly preferable. So I did get it right. Hopefully I did the dice calculator correct, but after several rounds, and again, the dice were again horrible, and it took me ages to do this, like several rounds of shooting, but eventually the HMG does take him down. Now I've got a data tracker here. Now, because I've killed his data tracker, he can't get points for, you know, securing the central zone with his data tracker in there. But there are 2 components to the scoring. It's get your data tracker into the central zone, and it's whether or not the data tracker is dead or not. So looking at it, I figured since it's going to be his turn last, if I move my Krakot greedily out into the middle, it's going to make it much easier for him to kill the Krakot. So rather than going for the greedy points, it would be better if I just escape and just run away with him. Elsewhere, the Ninja moves back to the safety of the Link team and the heated deployment zone. The Tanko is still outside of the deployment zone, but he's heavy infantry, so he doesn't really care about the cold. The cold never bothered me anyway. We have the HMG coming over towards the deployment zone and blasting out at these rifles, but the rifles actually do pretty well against them, crazily enough, due to bad luck. And we have like a Yuan Yuan coming down here next to these line infantry guys and blasting them with a chain rifle. Can't believe he's lasted 3 turns, it's just ridiculous. And maybe just repositioning the Link team a little bit. Repositioning my Pathfinder as it moves back to the back of the table. And then we have, I think, another Yuan Yuan appearing here. I can't remember what was going on with this one, but for some reason there's still a close combat raging on between these two guys. Honestly, can't remember what's going on. So he does decide to go for a mad dash against my Krakot and sends this this camo marker all the way over to my side of the table where I'm hiding the Krakot in his last turn. And it does turn out to be, I think, a Chasseur or another Foxtrot, can't quite remember, but the Krakot, to add insult to injury, is able to survive this last-ditch effort and not get killed. So you've got a situation where the Krakot actually survives this somehow by winning the face-to-face roll with a dodge or something like that, and we're golden. Then the Foxtrot in the middle has a go, but runs out of orders, so, you know, comes down and it has pressed a button, but isn't able to make it over here. So we finally are able to manage to wind up the game, and thinking in terms of scenario, we've both turned on one of the consoles each. Most of our armies are in the heated areas. I've kept my data tracker alive, he's lost his. But even if he had killed the Krakot, when we added up the points, I was actually comfortably ahead on points and would have won anyway. Just because I've still got a lot of points there bulked up in the Tanko and the Link team and the Ninja and a couple of peripheral things, whereas he's lost the key expensive units in his army. He's lost his Wolver and his Spetsnaz. He did lose his motorbike by the end of it. Things like that. Uxie McNeil, like the actual costly models in his army were dead. So, and he did lose a lot of cheerleaders as well. So it was a win to iKari. But don't think I could have really done it without the help of those amazing Yuan Yuans at the start. Like, how did that even happen? Imagine how this game had gone if he'd had a Spetsnaz there and he hadn't been a lost lieutenant turn 1. I mean, I think it would have been a bit of a different story. But, yeah. iKari versus Ariadna. iKari wins. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. And we'll see you again pretty soon.